In southern China, scientists found ancient forests with animals and plants that were considered extinct. In several karst sinkholes, hidden deep in the mountains under green hills of southern China, engineers discovered something they did not believe themselves at first. It was a pit of such depth, as if it was trying to swallow the earth itself. And when they finally reached the very bottom, there were no stones there, no ruins. Instead, something so unexpected that it would shake the entire world. A hole that seems like it should not exist. At the beginning of 2022, a group of engineers was conducting an ordinary inspection of terrain in Lei County, Guangxi Province, China. During satellite scanning, the team noticed something strange, a huge depression in the ground. It was much larger and deeper than anything they had encountered in this area. What at first looked like just a sinkhole very quickly turned out to be one of the largest geological discoveries of recent years. Local residents had long called this mysterious pit the Heavenly Mouth. They said that birds disappear if they fly over it, and that cool air is constantly pulling from the depths. Many considered it made up, but now even skeptics were beginning to wonder, what if there is truth in the old stories? When the engineers arrived at the site, they were literally stunned. The sinkhole was gigantic, approximately 306 meters long, 150 meters wide, and almost 200 meters deep. To imagine the scale, it is as if a 60-story skyscraper could calmly fit inside. This is one of the largest karst sinkholes ever found in the world. From above, it seemed endless. Even during the day, the bottom drowned in complete darkness. The team tried to study it with drones, with cameras, and powerful flashlights, but each time everything ended the same way. As soon as the drones went deep enough, the signal disappeared, and the cameras could not make out anything in the thick black darkness, as if the sinkhole itself refused to reveal its secrets. But the scientists needed to understand what was down there. Is it dangerous? Could the sinkhole expand and threaten nearby villages? To find out, the engineers decided to pump out the water that had accumulated inside. It was a huge operation. They brought industrial pumps and began slowly lowering the water level, at the same time using high-precision scanners to map the walls of the underground cavity as it was being drained. What started as a standard ground inspection quickly turned into a serious scientific mission. Experts from all over China joined the work, including specialists from the China Geological Survey. Environmental researchers, speleologists, geologists came. Everyone wanted to see what this strange mouth was hiding. And the lower the water went, the more incredible began to appear. Through the fog rising from the depths, the team noticed a faint shade of green. At first, they thought it was a play of light. Maybe there is some kind of light source there. Maybe an ecosystem can exist on its own. At one moment, this sinkhole stopped being just a geological wonder. It became a biological mystery that broke the usual ideas about where life is even possible under the surface of the earth. But to understand how such a hidden world could appear, you first need to understand what created such a gigantic hole. The southern region of Guangxi is one of the most unusual places on the planet. Here lies a special landscape, huge massifs of rock that over time literally dissolve. The ground here mostly consists of limestone, and dolomite and gypsum are also found. And these rocks are not eternal monoliths. When it rains, water mixes with carbon dioxide from the air and turns into a weak acid. For thousands and even millions of years, this slightly acidic water seeps into cracks and begins to dissolve the stone underground. Scientists call this process karstification, and it is precisely what makes Guangxi so torn and dramatic. With cliffs, caves, and sinkholes, rainwater and underground rivers carve huge passages and caves in the rock. Some are so large that, theoretically, entire city blocks could fit inside them. But because of this, the surface becomes unstable. When the ceiling of a large cave thins and can no longer support its own weight, it collapses, and a gigantic funnel appears on the surface. Locals call such sinkholes tiankang, heavenly pits. They are much deeper and steeper than ordinary karst sinkholes, and sometimes at the very bottom of them, their own small forests and unique plants form. In Guangxi, there are more such gigantic sinkholes than anywhere else in the world. That is why scientists often call this region the sinkhole capital of Earth. The most famous is the Xiaozhai Tiankeng, the largest ever discovered. But recently, the attention of specialists has been shifting more and more to another place, a new Tiankeng in Leh County. It is not the largest, but what they found inside truly shocked the researchers. When the engineers began to study the sinkhole in Leh, they understood it might be part of a much more masштабный underground system. The data hinted that ancient rivers that once flowed on the surface had long gone underground and continued to wash out the rock from the inside. With the help of high-precision imaging methods and drilling equipment, scientists confirmed the limestone around the sinkhole is still slightly moving, meaning the funnel continues to grow slowly. Each rain adds its share. It dissolves a little more rock, and little by little expands the voids below. And then something happened that no one expected. Instruments installed deep inside recorded an unusually high level of oxygen near the bottom, much higher than the norm for such a closed space. Usually, air at such a depth stagnates. Oxygen in it drops. But here everything was different. High oxygen means someone is producing it. Most likely, plants that engage in photosynthesis. This one clue turned everything upside down. That means the bottom of the sinkhole in Leh is not just a dark, lifeless pit. Possibly, there's an entire hidden ecosystem there, and the team was already very close to seeing it with their own eyes. In May 2022, after weeks of careful preparation, a combined team gathered at the edge of the gigantic sinkhole. Experienced engineers, speleologists, and biologists. Their task was, for the first time in history, to make a human descent into the mysterious depths of the Tiankeng of Leh County. The stakes were high. No one knew what awaited in this seemingly bottomless emptiness. Every device, every participant, every step of the operation was checked and rehearsed in advance, so that everything would be as safe and scientifically correct as possible. To descend along the steep limestone walls, they used strong safety ropes and reliable anchors at the top. They descended in stages, carefully checking supports and fixation points. Before people went down, they sent small drones with laser scanners and built a three-dimensional map of the inner space. These maps helped lay the safest route and understand exactly how huge the sinkhole really was. In parallel, air sensors worked. The team checked whether there were dangerous gases and sharp temperature changes, and whether it was even possible to breathe inside. When the descent began, the surrounding world started to change. The air became colder, almost icy compared to the heat above. Bright light quickly disappeared, replaced by a dim bluish haze, and then complete darkness. The researchers switched on headlamps. The beams cut through the thick fog that hung in the air like a wet veil. And through this veil, they saw something that made the heart literally drop into the heels. In the walls gaped three huge cave openings, like doors leading into a hidden underground world. The lower they descended, the more strongly they sensed the smell of wet earth and moss. The walls glittered with thin mineral streaks, sparkling in the light of the lamps like silver veins. Water had formed this place for thousands of years, layer by layer. The researchers realized in front of them was not just a sinkhole. This is living memory of the movements of the earth. After hours of slow descent, they finally reached the bottom, about 192 meters down. And here, another surprise awaited them. Instead of solid rock, a thick layer of damp, soft soil. It seemed to live under their boots. This soil, rich and richle, spoke of the incredible. Life can exist here, hidden from the world above. Instruments quickly confirmed traces of oxygen, moisture, and organic, signs that something is really growing in this darkness. But what exactly? When they raised the lamps and swept the beams across the ground, what they saw took away their power of speech. They found not just a sinkhole, they stepped into a world that had been hidden for centuries. Imagine that you are looking into a gigantic hole in the ground, so deep as if it touches the sky. And suddenly, you discover down there a forest that no human hand has ever touched. These were not a couple of trees. It was an entire green world that somehow lived and grew where it seemed there should be nothing. The trees turned out to be incredibly tall. Some rose up to 40 meters. For understanding, this is approximately like a 13-story building. Their crowns almost reached the light, which sometimes still penetrated through the huge opening above. A rarest sight, a forest that grew in a place where you least expect to see life. This forest looked like a time capsule. Everything in it said that people had never descended here. The ground was covered with a dense carpet of ferns. Lianas hung everywhere. The moss was so soft and thick that it seemed like you were walking on blankets. The environment was perfectly clean and natural, the way nature itself creates it, without human vmešatelstvo. Scientists took soil samples, and the results turned out to be truly interesting. The soil was incredibly rich in nutrients, accumulated by centuries of natural processes. Fine sediment, tiny particles of stone and earth, fell from the walls of the sinkhole for a very long time. Minerals that water brought also flowed down drop by drop. All this accumulated for hundreds of years, making the soil very fertile, ideal for powerful trees and gustoi vegetation. But one of the most amazing things, this forest had its own weather. A dense canopy, a thick layer of leaves and branches above, created its own microclimate. Music. Imagine it as a small closed weather bubble. Inside it was humid, cool, and foggy, almost all year round. These are ideal conditions for growth. Not too hot, not too cold, there's always enough moisture. A real natural greenhouse that the forest built for itself. The engineers and scientists were delighted. They understood. An isolated forest can hide a mass of unknown species, plants, fungi, insects that no one has ever studied. Since this world was cut off from the rest of the light for a very long time, species here could develop by their own rules. Possibly, these are even relics of ancient eras, like a living museum from the past of the Earth. The way light got here also amazed. Yes, the sinkhole is deep, but part of the sun's rays still filtered through the upper opening. An ideal balance of light and shadow formed on the forest floor. Enough light to grow, but not so much as to burn everything with direct sun. And the deeper the researchers went into this green labyrinth, the more discoveries there were. They found small streams of water. This meant that the ecosystem is indeed self-sufficient. It has water, its own climate, and, apparently, its own unique forms of life. An entire world, as if sealed from time, hidden under the surface of the earth. But this wonder immediately raised new questions. How could such a huge and living world remain unnoticed for so long? What else does it hold? And what can it teach us about the past of the earth and about the incredible power of nature? When the research group examined the place, the scientists immediately noticed something strange in the walls of the sinkhole. Usually in karst sinkholes, the edges are torn and broken, as if the ground simply collapsed. But here the walls were smooth, almost polished, as if the rock was not shattered, but carefully carved. This suggested something important. A sudden collapse would leave rough, uneven edges. Smooth walls meant that the sinkhole formed gradually. Water washed it out for a long time. The scientists began to put the picture together. Rainwater, mixing with carbon dioxide, became slightly acidic. It seeped into cracks in limestone and dissolved it little by little until the voids expanded to the size of real caves. The caves grew, ceilings in places thinned, and at some point separate sections gave way. and that is how the huge opening appeared, inside which they were now standing. This was not one event. This was the result of thousands of years of erosion, proof of how patient and powerful nature can be. To understand what is hidden deeper, the engineers used seismic scanning, equipment that sends sound waves into the ground and builds an image of what is below. And when the data came, everyone was shocked. Behind the main shaft, long tunnels and deeper chambers were discovered, going beyond the visible walls. The sinkhole turned out not to be a single funnel. It was part of a huge underground network, possibly connected to rivers and caves that stretched for many kilometers. What is visible from the surface turned out to be only the entrance to a much more complex system. Next, the team took water samples from several points inside. They needed to understand, is water still flowing there, or has the system fallen asleep? The results showed that the groundwater is chemically stable and constantly moving, a clear sign that under the forest there is still a living, active underground river. This was critically important. This explained how the vegetation could survive so well. The trees and plants fed not only on rain from above, they were fed from below by fresh, mineral-rich water. This stable inflow created an ideal balance between geology and life. Because of the combination of factors, smooth, ancient walls, active water, and a self-sufficient ecosystem, scientists began to call this sinkhole a living laboratory, a rarest opportunity to observe how geology, water, and biology work together in a relatively closed environment. One more observation surprised the engineers. The structure looked very stable. Despite the enormous size, there were no new cracks or signs of displacement of the walls. Usually, sinkholes continue to change shape because of erosion and small collapses. But here the data showed there is no movement. It seems the shape has reached equilibrium. It was no longer expanding quickly and could remain for hundreds of years. For researchers, this was good news. It means the site can be studied safely and music in detail for a very long time. But one secret still gave no peace: the age of the forest at the bottom. It was not a young forest that appeared yesterday. It looked ancient, as if it had grown in isolation long before people even knew about the existence of the sinkhole. And this raised the main question: if the vegetation here developed for so long and no one touched it, then the sinkhole itself must have been open for hundreds and possibly thousands of years. And this challenged ideas about how quickly karst landscapes form and change. To truly understand the significance of the find, the team needed the strongest expert. Then Zhang Yuanhai, senior engineer of the Institute of Karst Geology at the China Geological Survey, joined the investigation. Zhang Yuanhai was not just a specialist. He was considered one of the leading authorities on karst, the ideal person to decipher the code of this sinkhole. When the main Chinese karst expert, Zhang Yuanhai, arrived at the sinkhole in Lei County, the team paused the work for a while. Zhang had studied limestone formations for decades, and his reputation in the scientific community was impeccable. Everyone understood. It was his assessment that would show how unique this discovery is. He began the inspection immediately. From the edge of the sinkhole, he and his group deployed high-quality cameras and laser mapping to examine the inner walls in detail. The first thing that caught his attention were 3 large cave entrances located at different heights. For an ordinary person, these were just dark holes in the wall. But for Zhang, it was the history of the sinkhole's formation, written by the water itself. Each entrance looked too correct for accidental razrushenia. The edges were smooth and even, with clear traces of Postoyani erosion, meaning water worked here for a long time and steadily for thousands of years. The upper entrance was the widest and resembled a natural arch. On the video recording, it was visible that its walls were still wet, a sign that once powerful flows under pressure passed through it. The second entrance was lower and was slightly tilted to the northeast. Along its edge, Zhang noticed thin layers of sediment accumulated over time, traces of ancient channels that had long dried up. The lowest and the largest entrance was located almost at the very bottom. In reflected light, mineral deposits on the walls could be made out. Airflow sensors showed a weak but constant current of cool air coming out of the opening, with a signature of moisture and organic-y. This was direct evidence. The system is still alive. Using instruments on site, illumination meters, echo sounders, temperature sensors, Zhang confirmed. All three entrances function. The movement of air is slow, but continuous. That is, these are not sealed cavities, but parts of an ongoing geological process. The difference in temperature and pressure between the entrances indicated a connection with deeper voids and, possibly, with a huge underground drainage network. For Zhang, this changed everything. This meant that the sinkhole is not just a collapsed pit. It is a window to the surface of a huge karst system that is still working, expanding, changing, and quietly reacting to forces inside the rock. But the deeper the team analyzed the data, the clearer it became. This thin balance is easy to disrupt. And what Zhang would discover next could destroy everything they had just found. 2 weeks later, Zhang Yuanhai returned to the site after reports that work was again being carried out near the sinkhole without permission. Driving up, he immediately saw several trucks at the edge and groups of people carrying equipment. The sound of machinery carried through the forest. Obviously, new excavation had begun. Across the Ploshadka stretched measuring stakes and ropes, signs of preparation for installing a tourist platform. Zhang instantly understood the danger. The limestone around the sinkhole was thin and in places vulnerable. Vibrations from drilling and heavy machinery easily pass through the ground and can cause stress deep inside the system. To assess the consequences, he ordered new scans of the walls using drones and remote cameras. The video confirmed the worst. On the wall, near the largest of the 3 cave entrances, new cracks appeared. They spread in different directions, cutting the smooth limestone like veins. Along the edges of the cracks, a fine, dusty coating was visible, a sign that the rock is crumbling and shifting right now. What had held stable for centuries turned out to be under dangerous stress. The structure began to give way. The pressure inside grew fast. When Zhang assessed the situation on the surface, the cause became obvious. The workers were digging trenches and installing metal supports under the future observation platform. Drilling and the work of machinery shook the ground for days. Zhang concluded it was precisely these vibrations that triggered the appearance of new cracks, which are visible in the drone footage. What nature created for millennia, people managed to destabilize in less than a week. Zhang ordered the work to stop immediately. He warned, even small activity on the surface can send a shock into weakened limestone and cause a total collapse. These cracks are not harmless scratches. These are active fault lines that spread inside the rock. He threatened to report the illegal work to the central authorities. The workers stopped and left, but Zhang understood. They can return. Today, one crew left. Tomorrow, another will come. His final report was harsh. The limestone is experiencing strong stress, and further vmешательство will lead to a complete catastrophe. The cracks are growing too quickly and unnaturally, and the next collapse will not be smooth. It will happen suddenly and can destroy the entire formation in a matter of minutes. He wrote a warning that strengthened everyone. The first to die will be those whom it will be impossible to save. The underground forest. When the ceiling collapses, falling rock will crush the roots, tear the soil. A flow of air and debris will suffocate everything living. Oxygen will disappear. Heat and gases will rise. And the hidden ecosystem will rot in complete darkness. Nothing will survive. What do you think? What should be done with such a sinkhole? Write your opinion in the comments below.